Welcome to Beyond the Veil, where we explore extraordinary near-death experiences that unveil the mysteries awaiting us beyond death. I'm Luke, your guide on this journey. Today, we uncover the astonishing story of Dr. Emily Carter, an astrophysicist whose encounter with the afterlife not only shocked her but forever changed her view on existence after a devastating car accident on a remote mountain road. Emily found herself in the presence of Jesus and received answers to some of the greatest mysteries of the universe, including the existence of life beyond Earth. Her experience challenges our understanding of science, faith, and the vast possibilities that lie beyond our world. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our incredible stories of hope, love, and the promise of a new beginning. Now, let's begin Emily's journey. The night sky had always been my sanctuary. As a child, I would spend hours lying on my parents' front lawn, staring up at the stars, wondering if someone, or something, was looking back. That fascination never left me. It only grew, shaping my life and leading me to a career in astrophysics despite my deep devotion to science. I never abandoned my faith. I attended church regularly and felt a profound connection to something greater than myself. To me, the pursuit of scientific knowledge and the search for spiritual truth were never at odds. They were different paths leading toward the same answers, but there was always one question that haunted me more than any other. Are we alone in the universe? It was this question that consumed my thoughts on that fateful night. It was late in the evening when I packed up my things at the observatory. I had spent hours analyzing the latest data from our radio telescope, searching for anything unusual, any signal that might indicate intelligent life beyond Earth. The observatory sat on Mount Sterling, a rugged peak in the Colorado Rockies. The winding mountain road leading back to town was treacherous, especially at night, but I had driven it hundreds of times before. As I navigated the curves, my mind drifted back to the day's research. I replayed the data in my head, searching for patterns, for anything that might suggest something more than random cosmic noise. That was my mistake. I didn't notice the sharp curve ahead until it was too late. The car skidded. My hands gripped the wheel, but the tires lost traction on the damp pavement. Time slowed. I remember the sickening lurch of my stomach as the car veered off the road. The world spun violently as my vehicle tumbled down the rocky embankment. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. Pain exploded through my body, and then, nothing. I expected darkness, oblivion, maybe the cold silence of death, but instead, I found myself in a tunnel of light. The pain was gone. My body felt weightless. Around me, colors swirled, shades I had never seen before, hues beyond the visible spectrum. The tunnel pulsed with a quiet energy, as if it were alive. I wasn't alone. I turned, though how I moved in this place, I couldn't say, and saw a figure bathed in radiant light. The warmth and love radiating from this being were overwhelming, unlike anything I had ever experienced. Somehow, I knew, without a doubt, that I was standing in the presence of Jesus. His form was both familiar and indescribable. His features were distinct, yet they seemed to shift, as though they couldn't be confined by a single appearance. His eyes held the depth of eternity, and in that moment, every fear, every doubt, every earthly concern vanished. "Welcome, my child," he said. His voice wasn't just heard, it resonated through my very being. I tried to speak, but I didn't need to. My thoughts seemed to communicate themselves. Am I dead? Jesus smiled, a gentle expression filled with infinite love. "You are between worlds, Emily. Your physical body is gravely injured, but your journey is not yet complete." As we moved through the tunnel of light, my mind raced with questions. So many things I wanted to ask. So many mysteries I had spent my life trying to unravel, but one question burned brighter than the rest. The same question that had occupied my thoughts in my final moments of consciousness: Jesus. I've dedicated my life to studying the stars, searching for signs of life beyond Earth. I had to know, are we alone? His expression was kind, understanding. The universe is vast and full of wonders, Emily. My Father's creation extends far beyond what you can see or imagine. My heart pounded. So there are other civilizations? Other intelligent beings? Jesus nodded. Life, in all its forms, is precious to us. The cosmos is teeming with diversity, each planet, each star system, a unique expression of divine creativity. But remember, Emily, the nature of that life may be beyond your current understanding. I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what he was saying. If life existed beyond Earth, Why hadn't we found undeniable proof? Why had every scientific attempt to make contact ended in silence? Jesus seemed to anticipate my thoughts. The universe operates on a scale beyond human perception. Time, space, and even the laws of physics are not constant throughout creation. Some civilizations exist in dimensions you cannot yet access or understand. My mind reeled at the implications. Everything I thought I knew, about space, about time, about the fundamental nature of reality, was being rewritten, and yet, for the first time in my life, I felt a profound sense of clarity. As we continued through the tunnel, I caught glimpses of other realms, other worlds, planets with multiple suns, beings composed of pure energy, civilizations existing in ways that defied all logic. It was overwhelming, it was beautiful, and it was only the beginning. I drifted through the tunnel of light, surrounded by colors and patterns beyond anything I had ever seen. Though my body was left behind in the wreckage of my car, I felt more alive than ever. The presence of Jesus beside me filled me with an indescribable peace, yet, despite the overwhelming love radiating from him, my scientific mind couldn't help but continue searching for answers. His words still echoed within me: life, in all its forms, is precious to us. Jesus had confirmed that the universe was full of life, other civilizations, other beings, but he also hinted at realities beyond human comprehension. My entire career had been devoted to finding evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. But now I was faced with the knowledge that such life existed in ways beyond what science could currently detect. I turned toward him. Though how I moved in this space, I couldn't say. Why haven't we found proof? My thoughts communicated the question effortlessly. Why is the universe so silent if it's full of life? His expression was patient, understanding. Because, Emily, you are searching for life as you know it. But existence is far more complex than what human senses and instruments can perceive. I struggled to grasp his words. Are you saying that alien life isn't physical? That it exists in another form? Jesus smiled gently. Some are as physical as you, but others exist in dimensions outside of your perception. Some civilizations live in harmony with universal laws beyond the boundaries of time and space as you understand them. I tried to process this. Scientists had long debated the possibility of higher dimensions, parallel realities, and non-carbon-based life. But hearing it now, from the source of all creation, made it feel both incredible and undeniable. So our technology isn't advanced enough to detect them? Jesus nodded. In many cases, yes, and in others, civilizations have chosen to remain hidden. They exist on different frequencies of reality. Just as radio waves exist all around you but remain unseen until tuned into. My mind raced with possibilities. If alien life existed beyond our perception, then perhaps the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, had been looking in the wrong places. Maybe our methods were too limited, bound by the constraints of our own understanding of physics. As if sensing my thoughts, Jesus extended his hand. The moment I reached for it, the space around us shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't just traveling through light. I was seeing into other realms. The first vision appeared before me like a window into another world. I saw a vast planet with 3 suns. Its sky painted in shades of violet and gold. Towering crystalline structures stretched toward the heavens. Pulsing with energy, strange beings moved gracefully across the surface, tall, luminous creatures whose forms seemed to flicker between solid and translucent. They had no mouths. Yet I could sense them communicating through thought alone. Another vision opened. A water-covered planet with endless rolling waves, where intelligent marine life swam in elaborate, glowing patterns, their bioluminescent bodies forming intricate designs in the depths. Then, a civilization so advanced that their bodies were composed purely of light and consciousness, existing outside of time itself. I gasped. These weren't just planets. These were entire ecosystems, entire societies, thriving in ways I had never imagined. Each of these civilizations, Jesus explained, was created with intention, just as Earth was. My Father's creativity knows no bounds. Tears filled my eyes. It's beautiful, Jesus smiled. Yes, and yet, humans often believe they are alone. The visions faded, and I found myself once again standing beside Jesus in the infinite light. Though I was overwhelmed with awe, my scientific mind was still trying to make sense of it all. Why don't these civilizations contact us? I asked. Why haven't we made contact with them? Jesus looked at me with infinite patience. Some have, but most remain unseen because humanity is not yet ready. My heart sank. Not ready? Your world is still learning. He continued. Many civilizations have reached a level of spiritual and technological maturity that allows them to exist in harmony with the universe. But Earth is still in a phase of discovery, growing, evolving, and learning to balance power with wisdom. Contact is not just about technology. It is about responsibility. I thought of humanity's history, wars, greed, division. Had we proven ourselves to be trustworthy stewards of knowledge? Until your world is ready? Jesus said, many will remain hidden, waiting for the time when humanity can receive the truth with wisdom rather than fear. I lowered my gaze. Humbled, we had always assumed that extraterrestrials would be eager to reveal themselves to us. But what if we had it backward? What if we were the ones who needed to prove ourselves worthy of such contact? I felt a shift in the space around me. The warmth of Jesus' presence remained, but I sensed a pull. As if something was calling me back, I looked up at him. Is it time for me to go? He nodded. Yes, Emily. Your journey in the physical world is not over. You must take what you've learned here and share it. Continue to seek knowledge, but also remember, the greatest mysteries of existence are not found in the stars, but in the heart. Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't want to leave. There was so much more I wanted to understand, so much more I wanted to ask, but deep down, I knew he was right. Jesus smiled one last time. Remember, the universe is full of wonders, but the greatest miracle is the capacity for love and understanding in every sentient being. Cherish that gift. And with that, the light around me swirled faster and faster. The colors blurred, and I felt a force pulling me backward. Then, a sharp gasp. My eyes flew open. I was lying in a hospital bed, machines beeping steadily around me. Pain rushed back into my body, but my heart was at peace. I had been given a second chance. Over the following weeks, as I recovered, I reflected deeply on what had happened. The conversation with Jesus, the visions of other worlds, the realization that humanity was still growing toward its readiness for contact. Everything had changed me. I returned to my work, but with a new perspective. I encouraged my colleagues to think beyond traditional scientific methods, to explore unconventional ways of searching for extraterrestrial life. I spoke at conferences, not only about science but about the importance of wisdom and spiritual growth, and more than anything, I carried with me the understanding that the true miracle of existence wasn't just in the cosmos, but in our capacity to love, learn, and grow together. I knew I would never look at the stars the same way again, because now I understood, we were never truly alone. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the first thing I heard when I awoke. My eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the sterile brightness of the hospital room. The weight of my body, once so light in the tunnel of light, now felt heavy, sore, grounded in the physical world. Once more I was back. My chest ached with every breath, and my limbs felt weak. But none of that mattered. I had been somewhere beyond this world, beyond life itself, and I had spoken with Jesus. Tears welled in my eyes as I replayed the experience in my mind. The visions of other worlds, the civilizations beyond human understanding, and the truth that the universe was teeming with life. All of it felt as real as the IV in my arm. And yet, I was here, trapped once again in the limits of human perception. A nurse entered the room, smiling warmly. You're awake. We were starting to get worried. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days since my car skidded off the mountain road. 2 days since I had crossed into a reality beyond what science could explain. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. The nurse offered me a sip of water, and as I drank, I realized I had returned with something more than memories. I had returned with a mission. The days following my recovery were a whirlwind of medical checkups and concerned visitors. My parents flew in from Texas, their faces lined with worry, while my colleagues from the observatory sent messages of support. But I couldn't bring myself to talk about what had truly happened. How could I explain that? While my body lay broken in a hospital bed, my soul had traveled through dimensions unknown? That I had seen alien worlds and spoken to the creator of the universe. I tried to rationalize it the way a scientist would. Perhaps it had been a hallucination, my brain misfiring in response to trauma. But no, it had been real. More real than anything I had ever experienced. Jesus' words echoed in my mind. Humanity is not yet ready. I had spent my entire career searching for extraterrestrial life, thinking that if we just listened hard enough, We would find proof, but I had been looking in the wrong place. The truth wasn't just out there. It was intertwined with something far greater than science alone could explain. As my body healed, I found myself drawn back to my research. But this time, I approached it with new eyes. I met with my colleagues at the observatory, who were eager to get me back on my feet. Emily, we just got new data from the telescope array. There was an unusual signal last week, some kind of anomaly. Normally, I would have jumped at the chance to analyze it. But something inside me hesitated. The search for life beyond Earth had consumed me for so long. But now I understood that evidence wasn't just about radio signals or distant planets, it was about consciousness. Awareness. Connection. Let's keep looking, I told them, smiling. But maybe we need to expand the way we think about life beyond Earth. For the first time, I started exploring interdisciplinary research, working not just with astrophysicists but with biologists, quantum physicists, and even theologians. I began attending conferences that blended science and spirituality, asking the hard questions I once ignored. Could extraterrestrial life exist outside our conventional understanding of space and time? Was it possible that intelligent civilizations had already visited but in ways we couldn't comprehend? And, most importantly, were we ready for contact? I started giving talks, not just in academic settings but in places I never would have considered before: churches, spiritual retreats, even small community groups. At first, my colleagues thought I had gone off the deep end. "You're a scientist, Emily," one of them scoffed. "You can't seriously believe in all that mystical nonsense." I smiled. Why does searching for truth have to be limited to one field? Because truth wasn't just found in equations and data, it was found in experience, in faith, in the way we connected to the universe and to one another. Years passed, and my career evolved in ways I never expected. New telescopes and technologies allowed us to peer deeper into space than ever before, uncovering exoplanets in the habitable zone at an unprecedented rate. The scientific community was on the brink of major discoveries, but for me, the greatest revelation had already come. I found myself drawn to studying extremophiles, life forms that thrived in the most hostile conditions on Earth. If life could survive in acidic lakes, deep-sea trenches, and the frozen tundra, then surely the possibilities for life elsewhere were far greater than we had ever imagined. More importantly, I realized that the biggest barrier to discovery wasn't technology. It was us. Humanity was still too divided, too self-absorbed, too fearful of the unknown. We weren't ready for the responsibility that would come with the knowledge of other civilizations, but maybe, someday, we would be. And that was my mission now, to prepare people not just with science, but with understanding, with faith, because I had seen what lay beyond the stars. And I knew that one day, when we were ready, the universe would welcome us with open arms. One night, years after my accident, I stood outside in my backyard, gazing up at the night sky. The air was crisp, the scent of pine carried on the breeze. I had spent my whole life searching the heavens, waiting for proof. Now, I knew I didn't need it. Jesus' words remained etched in my heart. The greatest miracle is the capacity for love and understanding in every sentient being. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. The search wasn't just about finding life out there. It was about becoming the kind of people who were ready to meet it. And so, I continued looking up at the stars, knowing that the universe still held more mysteries than I could ever imagine. But now, alongside my scientific curiosity, I carried something even greater: peace and the certainty that we were never, ever alone. The stars above shimmered in the quiet night as I stood outside, the cool Colorado air brushing against my skin. It had been years since my near-death experience, yet not a day passed when I didn't think about it. My conversation with Jesus, the visions of other civilizations, and the realization that humanity was not alone had changed everything for me. I had spent my life searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, scanning the vast cosmos for a signal that might prove we were not alone. But now I knew the truth. The universe was full of life. The problem wasn't whether it existed. The problem was whether we were ready to acknowledge it, and that was the mission I now carried. The scientific community was skeptical of my shift in perspective. Many of my colleagues dismissed my experience as a hallucination brought on by trauma. Others outright mocked me. "Emily, you've always been one of the best in your field," a senior researcher at the observatory told me one evening over coffee. "But talking about near-death experiences and God in the same breath as science? You're losing credibility." I took a slow sip of my drink before responding. And what if the greatest truths require us to step outside what we think we know? What if the answers aren't just in data, but in experience? He sighed, shaking his head. Science doesn't deal with faith. But faith and science are both searching for the same thing, truth. I said, what if they were never meant to be separate? He had no answer for that. I had spent years behind telescopes, analyzing data, searching for mathematical proof of extraterrestrial life. Now, I felt compelled to share something beyond equations and research papers. I needed to share my story at first. I spoke only in small, private circles, at churches, in spiritual retreats, in quiet conversations with those open to listening. I wasn't trying to convince anyone of anything. I was simply telling them what I had experienced. What I had learned. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life, scientists, religious leaders, everyday seekers, came to hear my story. Some had their own near-death experiences to share, their own encounters with something beyond this world. Others simply listened, their eyes wide with wonder. One night, after a lecture at a university, a student approached me hesitantly. I grew up believing science had all the answers, she said, clutching her notebook to her chest. But your story, it makes me wonder. Do you think faith and science are supposed to work together? I smiled. I think they were always meant to. As I continued speaking publicly, invitations began to come from unexpected places. Some were from academic institutions curious about the intersection of consciousness and quantum physics. Others came from theological circles eager to understand the spiritual implications of intelligent life beyond Earth. I had unknowingly become a bridge between two worlds, science and spirituality. One of the most memorable conversations I had was with a Catholic priest after a symposium. He listened intently as I described the beings I had seen, the civilizations existing in dimensions beyond our understanding. Do you think they know God? He asked me. I thought about Jesus' words. All life is precious to us. I think they know him in ways we can't even comprehend. I said, maybe they see him not through religion, but through pure understanding. He nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps we have limited God by thinking he only speaks to us in the ways we recognize. I had never considered it that way before. But it made sense. Just as different cultures on Earth had unique ways of connecting with the divine, why wouldn't it be the same across the universe? Despite the resistance from some of my colleagues, I wasn't alone in my evolving view of the cosmos in the past decade. The search for extraterrestrial life had changed dramatically. Scientists were no longer just looking for Earth-like planets. They were studying extremophiles, organisms that thrived in conditions once thought impossible for life. If life could exist in deep-sea hydrothermal vents or survive radiation levels in space, why couldn't it also exist in ways that defied our current biological understanding? I began collaborating with a group of astrophysicists and biologists who were rethinking the definition of life itself. We started asking new questions. Could consciousness itself be a form of intelligence that doesn't require a physical body? Was it possible that civilizations advanced enough had moved beyond material existence? Had humanity already been contacted in ways we failed to recognize? As our research expanded, we gained unexpected support from areas we never imagined. Even NASA and the Pentagon had begun declassifying files about unidentified aerial phenomena, what most people called UFOs. Maybe, just maybe, the world was starting to wake up. One evening, as I watched the sky through my backyard telescope, I thought back to Jesus' final words before I returned to my body. The greatest miracle is the capacity for love and understanding in every sentient being. Science could explain the mechanics of the universe, but it could never explain why we longed to understand it. That longing, the need to search, to explore, to connect, was the very thing that made us ready for greater truths. But first, we had to understand ourselves. I realized then that the real reason we hadn't made open contact with extraterrestrial civilizations wasn't because they didn't exist. It was because we weren't ready. Humanity was still learning, still growing. We had to overcome fear, division, and self-interest before we could be entrusted with something as monumental as knowing we were part of a greater cosmic family. It wasn't just about science. It was about the evolution of our consciousness. Today, my work continues, but in a different way. I no longer spend my nights searching for radio signals from the stars. Instead, I work to prepare humanity for what's to come, not by proving the existence of aliens, but by helping people understand that the search for life beyond Earth is also a search for ourselves, because when the time comes, when we are ready, I have no doubt that the universe will open its doors to us, and when that moment arrives, I hope we will meet it with the wisdom, humility, and love that Jesus spoke of. Until then, I will continue looking up at the stars, knowing that we are never truly alone. The years since my near-death experience had been transformative. I had spent much of my life searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, believing that proof would come in the form of radio signals or physical evidence. But after my time in the presence of Jesus, I understood that the truth was much more profound. We were not alone, not just in the physical universe, but in the grand design of existence itself. There were other civilizations, other forms of intelligence, and even realms of being that existed beyond human perception. Yet, despite this knowledge, I had also learned that humanity was not yet ready. It wasn't that aliens were avoiding us or that we lacked the technology to find them. It was that contact wasn't just about scientific discovery. It was about spiritual and moral maturity, and that was where my work now focused. In the past decade, public interest in extraterrestrial life had grown tremendously. Governments and space agencies had begun declassifying reports about unidentified aerial phenomena. More scientists were openly discussing the possibility of intelligent life beyond Earth. It felt as though humanity was standing on the edge of a great revelation. I watched as research institutions expanded their definitions of what life could be. Scientists were studying organisms that thrived in extreme environments, bacteria that lived in boiling hydrothermal vents, microbes that survived in frozen Antarctic lakes, even forms of life that appeared to exist without oxygen. The more we learned, the clearer it became. Life was far more resilient and diverse than we had ever imagined, and yet, something still held us back despite our advancements. Humanity was still divided, politically, culturally, spiritually. War, greed, and fear continued to drive so much of our world. If intelligent extraterrestrial beings ever made contact with us, would we meet them with curiosity and openness? Or would we react with fear, suspicion, and aggression? I remembered what Jesus had told me. Some civilizations have chosen to remain hidden. They exist on different frequencies of reality, waiting for humanity to grow into a place of wisdom and responsibility. I had no doubt that they were watching us. The question was, were we ready to meet them? As I traveled across the country giving talks, I saw something shifting in people. There was a growing awareness, an awakening to the idea that life, consciousness, and the universe itself were far more complex than we had believed. I met spiritual leaders who saw a connection between their faith and the vastness of creation. I spoke with scientists who had begun to accept that consciousness might be a force as fundamental as gravity. One evening, after a panel discussion at a major university, a physicist approached me. He had been skeptical of my ideas but had listened intently as I spoke about my near-death experience. I used to think consciousness was just a byproduct of brain activity, he admitted. But what if it's more than that? What if it's fundamental to the structure of reality itself? I smiled. I think you're on the right track. If consciousness was fundamental, if it wasn't just something produced by biological processes but an intrinsic part of the universe, then perhaps that was why we had yet to detect extraterrestrial life. Maybe they weren't just using technology to communicate. Maybe they were using consciousness itself. This idea was gaining traction in both the scientific and spiritual communities. Researchers were beginning to explore the concept of non-local consciousness, the idea that awareness wasn't confined to the brain, but could extend beyond space and time. And if that were true, then perhaps civilizations more advanced than ours had already reached out to us, but we hadn't been listening in the right way. I had spoken with many people over the years who claimed to have encounters with otherworldly beings, not in the form of physical sightings, but in dreams, visions, and moments of deep meditation. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of these accounts, but the more I listened, the more I saw patterns emerging. Many described encounters with beings of light and energy, who communicated telepathically, not through words but through pure understanding. I thought back to my experience in the tunnel of light. Jesus had spoken to me not with his mouth, but through thought, through presence. Could it be that advanced extraterrestrial beings communicated the same way? Had they been trying to reach us all along, but we were too distracted, too limited in our thinking to perceive it? I started studying ancient texts, religious scriptures, and historical accounts of encounters with celestial beings across cultures and eras. There were stories of divine messengers, of people receiving wisdom from the heavens. What if many of these encounters weren't just religious visions? What if they were contact? As I stood on my back porch one evening, gazing at the sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. I had spent my life searching for proof of extraterrestrial life, only to realize that proof was never the point. The point was preparation. Jesus had told me that love and understanding were the greatest miracles. And I finally understood why. It wasn't just about being intellectually ready for contact, it was about being spiritually ready. I believed that one day, humanity would reach the level of awareness needed to truly engage with other intelligent beings. But that time hadn't come yet. For now, my role was to help people open their minds and hearts, to prepare them for the day when the veil would be lifted. Until then, I would continue looking up, knowing that the universe was alive with wonders beyond my comprehension, and when the time was right, I believed we would finally take our place among the stars. The night sky had always been my sanctuary, but now, it held more meaning than ever before. Years had passed since my near-death experience. Yet the memory of that moment, standing before Jesus, seeing the vastness of creation, and learning the truth about life beyond Earth, remained as vivid as the stars overhead. I often wondered, how much longer would humanity remain in the dark? We were on the cusp of something extraordinary. Scientific discoveries, spiritual awakenings, and shifting global consciousness all pointed toward an inevitable revelation. But were we truly ready? In the years following my experience, reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, had skyrocketed. The U.S. government had even declassified a series of files confirming encounters that defied conventional physics, objects that moved at impossible speeds, changed direction in an instant, and appeared to operate outside the known laws of nature. Despite this, the world remained hesitant. Some dismissed the reports as military experiments, while others clung to fear, imagining hostile invasions and apocalyptic scenarios. But I knew better. I had seen the truth with my own eyes. Not all life was bound by our physical understanding of the universe. Many civilizations existed in frequencies, dimensions, and forms beyond our comprehension. The question was no longer, are we alone? The real question was, why haven't they revealed themselves openly? Jesus had answered that for me. Humanity is still growing, still learning, until you can meet the unknown with wisdom instead of fear. Many will choose to remain unseen. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being observed, guided, and even protected, not just by divine forces, but by civilizations far more advanced than ours. We were like children on the brink of understanding something far greater than ourselves. But just as a child is not given responsibility before they are ready, we, too, had to mature before contact could happen on a grand scale. I dedicated my life to bridging the gap between science and spirituality, encouraging people to embrace both logic and faith. I no longer searched for radio signals from the stars. I searched for a shift in human consciousness. I spoke at universities, churches, scientific conferences, and spiritual retreats. I met with world leaders and small-town communities alike. Everywhere I went, I asked the same question: if we made contact tomorrow, how would we respond? Some said they would celebrate, while others admitted they would be terrified. Some feared the collapse of religious beliefs, while others believed it would strengthen their faith. The answers told me that humanity was at a crossroads. We were beginning to open our minds to the reality that we were part of something much larger than Earth. But we still carried fear, division, and doubt. It wasn't enough to acknowledge the possibility of extraterrestrial life. We had to become the kind of civilization that was ready to engage with it. That meant setting aside greed, war, and fear of the unknown. It meant embracing curiosity, cooperation, and love, the very things Jesus had told me were the foundation of higher wisdom. In my travels, I met others who had experienced something similar to my own near-death journey. A retired Navy pilot confided in me about an encounter with a luminous craft over the Pacific Ocean, one that moved as if it were controlled by thought itself. A woman in Arizona told me of a vision she had during a deep meditation, in which beings of light communicated messages of peace and guidance. A researcher from a top university admitted he had once dismissed all spiritual experiences as hallucinations, until he had an out-of-body experience during surgery and saw, for the first time, a reality beyond the physical world. Their stories echoed my own. I began to believe that contact was already happening, not through grand, public events, but through individual experiences, quiet moments of awakening, and encounters that transformed how people understood reality. Perhaps the key to humanity's readiness wasn't waiting for them to come to us, perhaps the key was us reaching a level of awareness where we could finally perceive them. One evening, after a long day of speaking engagements, I sat outside and gazed up at the stars. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. Jesus, I have done my best to share what you showed me. But what happens next? How do we help humanity take the next step? I didn't expect an answer. But I received one anyway, not in words, but in understanding. I felt his presence, warm and familiar, just as it had been in the tunnel of light. And then, a simple but profound truth settled into my heart. Prepare the hearts of humanity, and the mind will follow. I understood science was important. Proof was valuable. But none of it mattered if people weren't spiritually and emotionally ready for what was to come. We didn't just need better telescopes and faster spacecraft, we needed wisdom, humility, and love. That was the path forward. That was how we would prepare for the moment when we were ready to meet our cosmic neighbors. As I write this, I know that my time on this earth is growing shorter, but I am at peace. I have lived a life dedicated to discovery, not just of the stars, but of the deepest truths of existence. I have shared my experience, my vision, and my faith with those who are ready to listen. I no longer worry about if humanity will make contact with other intelligent beings. I know, without a doubt, that one day, we will, not because of government disclosures, not because of scientific breakthroughs, but because, eventually, we will grow into the kind of people who are ready. Until then, I will continue to look up at the sky, knowing that the universe is full of wonders beyond our wildest imagination. And when the time comes, when humanity stands on the edge of the greatest revelation in history, I hope we greet it not with fear, but with open hearts, open minds, and the wisdom to understand that we were never, ever alone. The world was changing. I could feel it everywhere, in the growing conversations about consciousness, the government's slow but steady disclosure of unexplained aerial phenomena, and the rising number of people who, like me, had glimpsed something beyond the veil of ordinary existence. For years, I had dedicated my life to preparing humanity for the truth, that we were not alone, that we never had been. But now, as I neared the twilight of my life, I found myself wondering, had we finally reached the tipping point? Were we ready? I often reflected on my near-death experience, the moment I stood before Jesus in that radiant tunnel of light. His words still echoed in my mind, prepare the hearts of humanity, and the mind will follow. Had we come far enough, or were we still wandering in the darkness of fear and doubt? I wasn't the only one sensing a shift. Scientists were uncovering new evidence that reality was far stranger than we had once believed. Quantum physicists were proving that consciousness itself might play a role in shaping the physical world. Neuroscientists were documenting near-death experiences with striking similarities to my own. The idea that life existed beyond Earth, beyond time, beyond the limits of our understanding was no longer a fringe theory, it was becoming a mainstream discussion. And yet, we were still hesitant to take the next step. I knew why. Fear of the unknown. Fear that everything we believed about our place in the universe might change. Fear that we were no longer at the center of creation. But what if we never had been? What if we had always been part of something much, much greater? I had seen it myself, the vastness of existence, the civilizations beyond our perception, the cosmic beauty that stretched beyond the stars. I had learned that some extraterrestrial beings were already aware of us, already watching, already waiting. But for what I suspected, I already knew the answer. They were waiting for us to grow up. One evening, I sat alone on my porch, gazing at the endless stretch of sky above me. I had spent decades searching for signals from the cosmos, for any sign that we were not alone. But that night, I realized something. Maybe we had been looking the wrong way. Maybe contact wasn't something that would come through radio waves or flashing lights in the sky. Maybe it was already happening, within us throughout history. Mystics, prophets, and visionaries had spoken of encounters with celestial beings. Ancient texts described heavenly messengers, wise teachers from the stars, and glimpses into other realms. Had they, too, been experiencing the same truth I had? Had they been shown, as I was, that the universe was alive with intelligence, woven together by a force far greater than ourselves? I thought back to Jesus' final words to me in that radiant place between life and death. The greatest miracle is the capacity for love and understanding in every sentient being. And suddenly, I understood the reason they had not revealed themselves openly was not because they were hiding, It was because we were not yet prepared to see we were still learning the most fundamental lesson of all, the lesson of unity, compassion, and wisdom. Without that, we were not ready. As the years passed, I felt an undeniable pull, a calling to leave behind more than just scientific papers or academic discussions. I needed to tell my story. In full, I began writing, pouring everything I had experienced into words: my near-death encounter, my conversation with Jesus, my visions of alien civilizations, and the undeniable connection between spirituality and the search for life beyond Earth. It wasn't about proving anything, it wasn't about persuading skeptics, it was about planting seeds. I knew that one day, long after I was gone, someone, maybe a scientist, maybe a seeker, maybe someone yet to be born, would read my words and recognize them as truth. Maybe by then, humanity would be ready. Maybe by then, the silence would finally be broken. Not long ago, I received a letter from a young astronomer. He had read my work, watched my lectures, and followed my journey. His words brought tears to my eyes. "Drive, Carter. I used to believe that science and faith were separate. That one had to be true and the other false. But after reading your story, I see now, they were never separate at all. They were two paths leading to the same truth. Thank you for helping me see the universe differently." I smiled as I folded the letter. That was all I had ever wanted, to help others see not just the stars, but the greater reality beyond them, not just the data, but the soul of the universe itself. I don't know when humanity will be ready, maybe in my lifetime. Maybe not for another 100 years, but I have faith that one day, we will step beyond our fear and into the vast unknown, not as conquerors, but as students, as explorers, as kindred spirits among the stars. And when that day comes, when the first open contact is made, I believe it will not be a moment of fear, but of understanding, because we will have finally learned what Jesus tried to teach me all those years ago: that the universe is not a cold, empty void. It is full of life, full of love, full of wonders beyond imagination, and we, all of us, human and non-human alike, are a part of it. The weight of time sat lightly on my shoulders these days. My hair had turned silver. My hands bore the marks of years spent in research, writing, and exploration. But my mind was sharper than ever. I had spent decades preparing humanity for what I believed was inevitable: a moment of contact, a great awakening, a step beyond the barriers we had built around ourselves. And yet, as I looked out at the night sky from my quiet home in the Colorado mountains, I realized something. The moment had already begun. It wasn't coming with flashing lights or grand announcements from the sky. It was happening in whispers, in quiet conversations, in the opening of minds and hearts around the world. I had once thought the greatest challenge was proving that we were not alone. Now I understood that the real challenge was helping humanity embrace the unknown without fear. In the past few years, more people had come forward with experiences they could not explain. Pilots, military officials, scientists, and everyday citizens spoke of encounters with craft that defied the laws of physics. Others, like myself, had visions, dreams, and moments of contact that transcended the physical world. The line between science and spirituality was blurring, and I welcomed it. I had come to believe that true contact was never going to be about spaceships landing on the White House lawn. It was about consciousness. It was about tuning in, opening up, and recognizing that we were already part of something far greater than ourselves. I had spent years studying ancient texts, the writings of philosophers, mystics, and theologians from different cultures. The pattern was there, across civilizations, across centuries: beings of light, celestial visitors, messages of wisdom and unity. Had we been experiencing contact all along? But through a different lens? Had we been too blinded by our expectations of what extraterrestrial life should look like to recognize it for what it was? I knew now that the answer was yes. Humanity was waking up, even if not everyone realized it yet. New advancements in quantum physics, consciousness studies, and space exploration were revealing that reality was far stranger than we had ever imagined. We were learning that particles could communicate across vast distances instantly. Consciousness might not be confined to the brain, but instead be a fundamental part of reality. Life could exist in environments we once thought impossible. Every day, the evidence mounted, pointing toward a universe far more interconnected than we had ever dared to believe. I knew that many were still skeptical, still afraid. Change is never easy, and the idea that we were part of a greater cosmic family challenged everything some people had been taught to believe. But I also knew something else: the truth cannot be hidden forever. One day, Humanity would reach the threshold one day. We would take our place among the stars, and when that moment came, it would not be a day of fear, it would be a day of understanding. I had shared my story with thousands, but I rarely spoke about one particular experience, one that happened long after my near-death experience. In the stillness of my own home, it was a quiet evening. Much like this one, I had been meditating, reflecting on the lessons I had learned. When I felt a shift in the air, a presence, it wasn't frightening or overwhelming, it was peaceful. Familiar. Then, in my mind, a voice, "You are not alone. We have always been here." I opened my eyes. And for a brief moment, I saw something standing at the edge of my vision, a being of pure light. Tall, radiant, its form shimmering as though it existed just beyond the fabric of reality, and then it was gone. Was it real? A dream? A vision? I had no doubt it was a confirmation, one final message to let me know that everything I had seen, everything I had believed, was true. Now, as I look back on my life, I know that my journey is nearing its end, but I do not fear what comes next because I have already seen it, the moment between worlds. The radiant light, the presence of Jesus, the knowledge that consciousness does not end with death. I am at peace. I do not know how much longer I have in this world, but I do know this: humanity is standing at the threshold. We are learning, growing, awakening, and when the time comes, when we are ready to take that final step into a greater reality, we will not be alone. We never were. If you are reading this, I hope you take away one truth. Do not be afraid. The universe is vast, but it is not empty. It is filled with life, with intelligence, with love beyond anything we can imagine. We are a part of something greater than ourselves. And that should not bring fear, it should bring hope. So, as you look up at the stars tonight, know this: someone is looking back, and one day, when we are ready, we will meet them, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as family. This story masterfully bridges faith and science, the physical and the spiritual, the known and the unknown. It challenges conventional thinking, encouraging us to step beyond rigid beliefs and embrace the possibility that God's creation extends far beyond Earth. The near-death experience, NDE, of Dr. Emily Carter serves as a powerful testament to the idea that the universe is teeming with life. But true contact is not just about technology, it's about consciousness, wisdom, and spiritual readiness. The most compelling aspect of the story is how Jesus does not deny the existence of extraterrestrial life but instead reframes the question. He shifts the focus from, "Are there aliens?" to, "Is humanity ready to meet them?" This brings a fresh and thought-provoking perspective that resonates deeply in today's world. The story also serves as a wake-up call for humanity, suggesting that before we can truly engage with higher forms of intelligence, we must first evolve in love, understanding, and unity. This ties into the broader themes of spiritual growth, personal transformation, and the importance of seeking truth beyond conventional boundaries. Lessons learned from the story. 1. Science and faith are not opposed, they are partners in truth. The story challenges the outdated idea that faith and science must be in conflict. True discovery requires both logic and spiritual awareness. The search for extraterrestrial life is not just a scientific pursuit, it is also a spiritual journey. 2. The universe is vast, and life is abundant. Jesus' message reveals that God's creation extends far beyond Earth. Just because we haven't proven alien life scientifically doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it simply means we lack the tools or awareness to perceive it. Many beings may exist in higher dimensions, different frequencies, or forms beyond human comprehension. 3. Humanity must grow spiritually before we can make contact. The reason aliens haven't openly revealed themselves is not because they aren't there, but because we aren't ready. War, greed, and division still plague humanity. If we cannot live in peace with each other, how can we be trusted to engage with civilizations far more advanced than us? Love, wisdom, and consciousness are just as important as technology in preparing for first contact. 4. Consciousness may be the key to contact. Communication with extraterrestrial life may not happen through radio waves or physical contact, but through consciousness, intuition, and spiritual connection. Many religious, mystical, and historical texts describe encounters with beings of light, celestial messengers, and visions of otherworldly realms. Perhaps contact has already been happening, but in ways that we've been conditioned to dismiss. 5. The search for life beyond Earth is also a search for ourselves. The deeper lesson is that before we look to the stars, we must look within. Are we ready to meet civilizations that have mastered peace, love, and wisdom? Or would we repeat our history of fear and division? The journey to the cosmos begins with the evolution of human consciousness. This story is more than just a fascinating near-death experience. It's a blueprint for the future of humanity. It teaches us that the answers we seek about the universe are not just out there among the stars. They are within us, in how we love, how we grow, and how we choose to see the world when we are ready, when we move beyond fear, division, and ignorance. The universe will welcome us with open arms. Until then, we prepare. Rocket sparkles, keep looking up. And more importantly, keep looking within.